Again, since it's Father's Day, I thought this would be a good time or an appropriate time to talk about Buddhism and fathers. So I'm not aware of any Buddhist country that has a Father's Day, but I think Buddhist countries in general teach the benefits of honoring your parents and repaying them for their kindnesses. So when you look at the life of the Buddha, it's pretty clear there's some ambivalence about family life. So what I want to do is explore the two relationships, one between Siddhartha and his father, and the other between Siddhartha and his son. So as the story goes, and I mean, no offense to people who believe this literally, but I'm going to treat this as a story, as a myth or a legend. As the story goes, the Buddhas or young Siddhartha is born in northern India, now Nepal, sometime around 500 BC, give or take, 100 years, one way or the other. His father's a king, kind of a local warlord. His mother passes away about a week after he's born. But a key event is there's a prediction by an astrologer that this boy will grow up to either be the uniter of India and conqueror of the world, or the redeemer of mankind. So his father is kind of a typical father, if not an archetypal father, in the sense that he's a decent guy, but he's all about authority, power, and control. And he wants to control the destiny of Siddhartha. So what he does is he makes sure he gets plenty of training in military arts. He shields him from any sort of religious training. He makes sure he is introduced to all the pleasures of the material world. And he makes sure that he does not see any of the suffering in the world. And of course, in the world of myth and legend, that is the surefire way to make sure that exactly the opposite occurs. So that right there is a good lesson for parents in general and fathers in particular. You can't live your dream through the life of your child. The best you can do is help your child live their dream. So when I reflect on my own father, and I just happen to have not a photograph of him, but a painting. Probably can't. This is done by a guy named Giovanni Pacini in Italy, circa 1943 or 44. And the story behind it is my dad was in the Army, of course. And I think he paid $2 to have this guy painted. And of course, I don't think any of you ever met my father, but it is really a good likeness. I'd like to say Giovanni went on to become a famous Italian painter, but I Googled his name, came up with nothing. Okay, so in any event, I'm sure my father wanted the very best for me. But his idea of what the very best was conditioned by his life experience. That is, he wanted me to live his dream. I'm not sure that my dream was really that different than his, but when I became a teenager, I was really aware of the fact that I was being nudged along in a particular direction. And I started resisting that and resisting it and resisting it. At that time, my father was a Detroit police officer. So the way I rebelled against my father was I was in trouble with the police like all the time. And I suspect that happens with a lot of guys, that they grow up and at some point they start to rebel against their father. And indeed, in the world of literature and myth, there are a zillion stories of fathers and sons, banging heads. Okay, so in the case of Siddhartha, he grows up becomes a man, marries, and has a son. He names his son Raul, which apparently means fetter. So this is like naming your kid ball and chain. It's like, what's up with that? And my interpretation is when you bring a child into this world, you're taking on a huge responsibility. And no matter how much you love them, there are going to be moments where that kid feels like a ball on a chain. So if you can get past the name, the next part of the story might be even more troubling. His father had successfully shielded him from any sense of there being suffering in the world up until apparently Siddhartha was 30 years old. And he started resisting his father and went out of the palace on his own, kind of checked the town out, and saw the four sights, an old man, a sick man, a corpse, and a renunciate. And he was really troubled by that. So troubled that a little bit of rebellion turned into an outright revolt. And he left without saying goodbye, left his family behind, paying no alimony, no child support. And again, not even saying goodbye. So if that happened today, Siddhartha would be the classic deadbeat dad. And I don't think there's any getting around that. At best, you could call him like an absentee father. But of course, it didn't happen today. It happened, if it happened at all, it happened 2,500 years ago in India. So at the time, there was a cultural tradition around this. In India, a man could grow up, get married, raise a family, and after he had fulfilled all of his responsibilities and duties in life, it was almost expected that he would become a renunciate at the very end of his life. When I look at that, to me, in a sense, that's like preparation for death. I mean, when you die, you're going to lose all your possessions. You're going to lose your physical body. And the life of a renunciant is like sort of practice for that event occurring. Okay. Okay, so Siddhartha himself, though, was on a faster track. He had lived the life of a prince, had enjoyed everything the world had to offer, and had been a renunciate and accomplished all that by the time he was 40 years old. So his great insight was, of course, the thing that made him the Buddha, was that he discovered the middle path between the extreme of being attached to the things of the world and being rejecting or renouncing things of this world. So I think that can apply to fatherhood as well. That is, one extreme is the controlling father, where you're trying to create or shape the destiny of your children. The other extreme is the absentee father, where basically you're kind of leaving things to chance. And the Buddha is trying to steer like a middle path between those two. So, that's my Father's Day interpretation of the story. And there's a postscript, which I want to acknowledge, is that the Buddha wasn't a deadbeat dad. It was Siddhartha who was the deadbeat dad. He had not yet achieved his enlightenment. So, and happy Father's Day.